Oh, there we go. I think we finally got it. Hello, YouTube, to everyone watching. Oh dear. I think I was double broadcasting. Good job. To the wonderful people watching on YouTube, is everything all good? Can you see what's going on? Just doing a really quick check just before the talk to make sure everything's alright. Be hanging out for a couple more minutes, just while we wait. Just making sure that everything's stable, everything's good. And while we're here, how is everyone? Let me know in chat. About 5 minutes to go, and then we'll go live on Discord as well. So I'm going to jump into voice and Discord in a minute. I'd have a whiskey too, but I have to have clear head and all that for these complex technical topics so I could break them down. Hello Swan, I'm doing good as well. It's finally cooled down in the UK. I can think straight again. It's wonderful. I'd play some background music, but I don't know if I don't know whether Austin would be able to remove it when we come to edit the videos, unfortunately, so so you have to hold off there. Like I say, about 5 minutes to go, and then we'll get started on Discord. We've had a couple of issues with Discord in the past where the compression has just completely and utterly murdered the readability of the text. So if everything's legible, then we're doing something right. Actually, I could do some. Go on then, Austin, we'll play it. Ooh, we got some jams. Enjoy the sounds of smooth, royalty-free music and the occasional vape. I would rickroll if it was my own channel. Oh, hang on, I've just realised I don't think my desktop audio has been captured. There we go. Now you should get a bit of smooth background royalty-free music with the occasional vape. The devcord remix. Am I still playing WoW? Yes, I am. 2 seconds. There you go. That should be a little bit more bearable. The background track from Getting Over It. Oh, that one. I wouldn't be able to play that. Seriously, it'd absolutely kill me. I think maybe the second or third time I come from the top and hit the bottom, that's it. Keyboard goes through monitor. We've got about 3 minutes to go. I'm going to super quickly grab a quick refill of water and then we'll get started. Told you it'd be super quick. Already back. God, you completed Getting Over It once. It took 8 hours. It won't last 8 minutes. Before things start getting destroyed. $20.57, $20.58. Give it 1 more minute, and then we'll get started on Discord as well. Then I'll kill the smooth, royalty-free music with the occasional vape. The vaping sounds really tight altogether. It's the devcord remix. Okay, that's 2059. Now the background music goes away. Apologies. Because I don't think we can have it on the recording. If it's going to be on the recording, it'll be added later. Okay, good evening everyone on Discord. I've completed our check on YouTube. All seems to be going well. So we shall get started. Just as soon as I find the right window. Magnificent. So to everyone on Discord, if you could just let me know really quickly in live stream text if everything's okay there as well. And then we'll get started. Marvellous. Apparently all is well. Seems like it's showing. It's better than it not showing. Cool. So it seems like everything's in order. Let's jump in. Welcome to the devcord topic of the month for Backend RESTful APIs week 3. I jumped ahead of slide prematurely. Oops. So what exactly are we going to be covering this week? This week we're going to be looking at idempotency in RESTful APIs. This is a thing that you've probably never heard of, but you really need to know about because it is surprisingly important. It also comes with a horror story as well, which is a nice bonus. That's our cautionary tale. And we're going to be looking at what is idempotency. We're going to look at how to add it to your APIs as well. We're going to be having a look at Discord bots, which I'm sure a few people are excited about. We're going to be looking at how they're architected, how they work under the hood. And I think there's another point there. Yeah, and some considerations that you need to take into mind when you're actually building these things. We're also going to be having a quick look at monitoring and health checking. Why you need it. And a couple of common solutions that you can use to implement it on the cheap, which is just the way I like to do it. Oh, and some things to watch for as well in your monitoring, so you can actually get some benefit out of it. Idempotency. Again, it's that thing that you've probably never heard of, but you need to know about. It's basically ensuring that repeated actions don't change the state of the system. So, a good example of this would be the Just Eat fiasco from a few years ago in the UK. In a nutshell, what happened was, during a particularly high period of traffic for the service, the front end started showing some errors to users, saying that your request wasn't successful, please try again, and giving them a super handy little button to hit where they could just retry the request. Unfortunately, what happened was the back end of Just Eat was accepting the orders, it was processing them and it was storing them as it should, and worst of all, it was charging the user's card again every time they hit the retry button. I'm sure I don't need to explain to you why this is, oh my god, thermonuclear explosion bad. And the thing that really sucks about it is it could have been prevented by making the requests idempotent. Again, thank you Tom Scott for the example. I like to rip on Tom Scott's examples because they are absolutely fantastic. They detail things really nicely. So, many request methods are idempotent by nature. You've got get, put, and the delete requests. If you make a get request 25 times to an API, all that will happen is you will get the information back 25 times. The system state doesn't actually change. If you send a put request 25 times, most of the time if it's done properly, it will just update the same record with the exact same data 25 times. And if you send a delete request 25 times, the first one will be successful, but the other 24 won't. So these won't really, by and large, modify the system state over and over again with every single request. So excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat this evening. That leaves us with one request method, which is post. And how exactly do we make this idempotent? how do we stop 25 unique post requests that are all exactly the same from creating 25 separate rows in the database? The way that we do this is we create an idempotency token, or idempotency, however you want to pronounce it. What this is typically a hash which is created from repeatable parts of the request body. So if you've got things like a unique signature for maybe like an order, in the case of a food thing, maybe don't include that. You'd want to include things that are easily repeatable, that you can get out without any involvement from the front end. So we're going to stick with the context of food for most of this topic. We're going to be looking at, say, what's included in the order, the user account that made the order, because things like Just Eat, they require you to make an account before you submit orders. And you probably have things like the amount, and sometimes you'd have the date as well. Sometimes. Dates can make things a little bit tricky when you're dealing with idempotency. But for the most part, if you're sticking with something like food, it's quite rare that someone will make several orders multiple times in one night. Sometimes. There is an asterisk on that. So you check for this token on the back end before you actually do the thing. So before you actually create the order and charge the card, you'd make sure that you haven't seen this request before. And that's what the idempotency token's for. It's like a unique identifier for this order, which says that we've done this before. You can use it to check to see whether you're trying to do the same thing again, and if you are, you can handle it. But why? Because it sounds, in broad Yorkshire speak, it sounds like note for alt. When you're taking payment for something, this is where your absolute worst case scenario hides. If you were to say charge the user's card 25 times, if they go and make the same order 25 times, you've suddenly taken a £20 meal and you've turned it into multiple hundreds of pounds. That's, it's terrible. If you were to take multiple payments, as well as the customer wanting your head, the accounting department will probably want your head, and most importantly, your boss will want your head. This is where idempotency tokens come into their own. High-load applications are another good example of where idempotency is required. If you've got one endpoint that's continuously getting spammed with traffic, and it's continuously writing to disk every single time, even though it should have only done it once, the whole system could come to a screeching halt. Like, say, you've filled the disk up. Oops, nothing else can work. Not even the OS can work for the server. That's bad. This would be another example where an idempotency token could save you. Lastly, it's a safety net. I like safety nets. I like to build them into all of the things that I build. Even if the front end completely messes up and starts continuously spamming the request at your back end, no problem. You can determine whether it's actually been done already, and you can junk it out if needs be. Because not every part of the system integrates with each other perfectly, so it's worth taking the steps to protect yourself. So how? How exactly would you do this? Again, you generate a repeatable token. So once more, in the context of food, you probably take things like the user account, the order contents, the amount of the order, and sometimes the date when the order is being made. This needs to be something that you can easily generate again with no input, just using the data that you've got to hand. So you shouldn't really be relying on the specific token being sent from the client side, although that is useful if you can have that. If it's done right, it doesn't actually matter how large the request body is, because it's just going to be a hash of what's in there. A surprisingly perfect example for this would be Big Smoke's order. So we'd take all of the items that are in the order, there are many. We'd take the known customer, that's Big Smoke. We'd take the date when he was making the order, but again, once more, just be careful when you're using dates with idempotency. And we'd take the location, which was Clucking Bell at Willowfield. Somebody's going to correct me on that, I can feel it. You'd then save this token in the database, so if, say, somebody else was to try and make Big Smoke's order as Big Smoke, and they were trying to make it from the same location, and they just kept going and going and going, say the systems weren't working properly and it just kept spamming the request, no problem. Big Smoke doesn't go home destitute, because you can detect that this order is being duplicated over and over again, and you could just junk it out. So we'll do a quick recap on idempotency tokens. It's actually a lot simpler than it sounds. You create an easily repeatable token. You send this from the client side if available. You can generate this on the client side if you want, but doing it just on the back end is usually the safer way to do it. If you don't have this token, you can create it on demand, and you can store it in the database. Then you search for this token when the post request comes in certain circumstances, and if a match is found, you know that this is a duplicate that was only supposed to happen once. And then you can either junk it out, or you can run maybe some custom logic that determines what actually happens in the event that this takes place. Once again, just be careful if you're using dates or times when you're creating these tokens, because time only moves forwards and idempotency tokens are typically used for dealing with things that happened in the past. So just be careful with that. And I'll take a super quick break for some questions. So I got one from YouTube. So it's like generating exactly one token that goes in the database and checks if duplicate is posted and will execute the code. Yeah, pretty much. So again, coming back to the Just Eat example, one way that they could have fixed that was by generating an idempotency token, either on the front end or on the back end. And then when the retry comes in, they could check to see whether they have this token in the database, and if they do, they could just say, oh dear, something's wrong. Clearly, we don't want to run this again, we'll just junk it out. And then maybe we could send a notification to the front end that tells the user to call us or something, and we'll deal with it that way. Got another one from Discord here. So to clarify then, the idea with the token is that it's pre-processed on the back end from sent data prior to inserting something. That's the way I'd usually do it, yeah. You can generate these on the front end. Typically, it just needs to be a hash of parts of the order, which you can easily repeat over and over again. So something as simple as like getting all the data together, maybe turning it into JSON and then MD5ing it. That would do it, because then you could easily generate that again from the next order that comes in. Oh, excuse me. How long should these tokens last? How long should it be after we delete them? 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week? Typically, an idempotency token would be permanent. So it's up to you, really, for your use case, how long you need it to be there. I would typically assume that a user that's making, again, a food order, they're using a known card, it's a known user account, it's a known order, it's a known amount, on a known day. That would be the idempotency token then, would mean that no more requests could be made using that exact order, that exact account, that exact order amount could be made on that day. But again, it requires a lot of finessing. It's very dependent on your circumstances. I'm looking at it from the context of food in this example because I had the Just Eat horror story to hand. Got another question from YouTube. Would it be a good practice to make these tokens for every post route? Again, I think that would depend largely on your particular circumstances. Sticking with food, I'd go with the assumption that the user is not going to be making the same order again that same night. They only want to do it once. So then in that instance, I'd have just that token protecting that endpoint. I wouldn't have it on everything, like say a registration form, things like that. I do believe that's everything. Everybody else has any questions? Just leave it a minute and then I'll jump ahead. Because the next topic is Discord bots, and I'm sure everybody's going to be really hyped up for that one. YouTube is about 10 seconds behind. Yeah, I was expecting that. Cool. So we've got no more questions. Let's jump ahead to Discord bots. Believe it or not, understanding how they work would be a good idea before you build them. I'd just like to preface this section of the talk by saying this is not a tutorial. I see a lot of help questions floating around how to build Discord bots using things like Discord.js. This is not helping you how to do that. This is a high level sort of abstract talk about how these things work, how the architecture works. What I'm basically trying to do is I'm trying to give you the terms and the concepts that you need so you can go and research the actual nuts and bolts of it yourself. Because then your searches will become a lot more efficient. So with that out of the way, I'll first mention that Discord bots are a non-standard architecture. They basically serve as a bridge between the Discord client, your backend, which is the bot, that's what a bot is, it's a RESTful API, and Discord's API. So your bot sits in the middle between these two parts. It relies very heavily on an authorization protocol known as OAuth, which I'm not going to go into because this is like an entire topic of the month on its own, is OAuth. If you do a quick Google for OAuth 2.0, you'll find all kinds of really dry, dense information on it. It's a very cool protocol, but I'm not really going to go into it because it gets very dry, very technical, very quickly. There are some limitations to be mindful of when you are building a Discord bot, and I will cover those. So, bridge architecture. That's the term that I use for this. I don't know whether that's the official term, but that I feel that's the best way to describe it. There are 3 critical layers to a Discord bot that I mentioned. You have the Discord client itself, which is the one that you jump on and share your funny memes with your friends. You have your backend for the bot, which is the bot. When you say a Discord bot, that's what you're referring to. It is the API. And there is Discord's API as well. So if you imagine Discord client on the left, your bot in the middle, which is a RESTful API, and Discord's API on the right. Your bot is kind of the bridge between the two. The general flow of a Discord bot is that the Discord client is used to send commands to your backend. An example which you see sometimes on devcord is .yeet, which is used to ban people. That command would be sent from the Discord client to devmod, which is the bot which processes that command. And then devmod will make requests to the Discord API to actually carry out that operation. Because you can't ban people yourself from a Discord bot, you need to tell Discord that this user is no longer allowed to access our server. So you need to make Discord aware of that. That's why you'd use their API. Backend runs custom logic in response to the commands. So you can do basically whatever you want here. This is completely up to you. This is where things get a little bit weird for some people because it's just boom, mind explosion, so many possibilities. Some of these operations might require Discord to be aware of what you're doing. So let's say things like managing users, managing roles, banning users. These are things that Discord themselves would have to do because, again, you can't control who's banned using your bot. Discord has to do that for you. They manage the access for who can access what server. So some of your logic might require speaking to Discord, and that would be what your bot does. You can kind of think of it as another interface into some of Discord's operations. OAuth comes into it, again, very heavily, because your bot is essentially acting on your behalf. Or if you're adding a bot that somebody else has built, it's acting on your behalf, not theirs. You sort of get the picture. It gets a little bit muddy, but as soon as you start reading into OAuth, it starts to make a lot more sense. Client libraries are a very big part of building Discord bots. They are glorified wrappers around Discord's API. They send requests and they process them because sometimes it's not entirely standard. Some of the output that comes back from Discord's API, it's a bit weird. It cuts through a lot of the weirdness which is going on with the API. And I definitely recommend you use one of these clients. It's been a long time since I've worked with Discord's API without a client, or going raw as it's sometimes called. But last time I did it, it wasn't fun. Read the docs for your given client library. Please, please, please read the docs. I cannot stress it enough. Please read them. These client libraries are absolutely fantastically documented for the most part. 99% of the questions you see floating around how to use them are answered by a quick skim of the docs. They put so much time and effort into documenting these because there's so much weirdness that goes on. Please do read them. If not to save the Discord community that you're asking, at least as a, some lip service, some respect for the authors of the library. Popular libraries include Discord.js, no prizes for guessing what language that's for. Discord.py, again no prizes. D#+, which is for .NET, if you like building stuff in, say, D#, VB.NET, if you're one of those people. And JavaCord, again, no prizes for guessing what language that's for. These are just some of the most popular ones that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's absolutely tons more. If you know of a particular library that you like to work with, please do share it in Backend chat. We'll put it in the resources. So moving on, we have some limitations and common pitfalls of Discord bots. The first one is rate limiting that everyone will have come up against, even if you're not building a bot. Say you've got managed message permissions on a server, if you start deleting a lot of messages one after another, eventually the Discord client will just stop deleting the messages. That's because you've been rate limited. You're sending too much traffic to Discord's API and they've decided to put a stop to it. Discord likes to throttle very hard. It's very aggressive and it's very difficult to preempt when you're going to be rate limited. Just because it's an API that handles a lot of traffic. So it's a lot quicker just to go, nope, you're done now. Chill out, come back in half an hour. Limits can change frequently with no notice. Something else that I've noticed with Discord's API, certain servers seem to have different rate limits. I think sometimes partner servers get a little bit more headroom, a few more requests to work with the API. But for the most part with rate limiting, it's based on time and not volume. So 10 requests in the space of a second is viewed a lot worse than 10 requests over the space of a second each. Discord API changes. This is one that's bit me before. You are at the complete mercy of Discord. They can change things and they can change them as much as they want and they don't even have to notify you. But to be fair to Discord, they are usually pretty damn good at notifying developers of big changes that are about to screw things over for you. Sharding and scale. This is people that have built bots before that cover a lot of servers. You can usually spot them a mile off because their hair's grey and they look very stressed out. That's because scaling bots to run on tons of servers will drive you mad. 100% guaranteed. This will drive you absolutely insane. Read the documentation very thoroughly and test very thoroughly as well. The reason why it's surprisingly difficult to scale a Discord bot is that there isn't really any one way to do it. There's lots of different solutions and they all seem to depend very heavily on what the bot's actually doing and how it does it. So it's one of those things that working out how to scale it, you're going to end up having to put out a lot of fires and learn that way. But for the most part, you won't have to worry about scaling your bot. Some examples of some really big bots that scale. I think it's Dino that it's called. That runs on enormous amounts of Google Cloud Platform clusters. I think CircleBot as well. That's sharded. That runs on a lot of different clusters. You can go check them out. If it's a large bot, it's a good chance it's sharded. One of the cool things that I like about Discord bots, web control panels. You can expose things like settings and functionality for your bot via a web application. Depending on how you've built things, how you've set them up, it functions exactly like a regular web app and a backend because it's not running within Discord, this is just running on the web. It just so happens to change something that does actually run on Discord. You can modify the functionality if you so desire. If you set it up to read from a config and say your web application modifies that config, that could be one way that you do it. There's more OAuth involved, a lot more OAuth involved. A common theme for Discord bots. As a general rule, the user will log into your web control panel via Discord. And when they click the button to log in with Discord, it will send them off to what's known as an OAuth prompt on Discord's site. So you notice it will redirect you off the app that you're looking at, it will send you to Discord. This will then present you with a screen which tells you the application that wants to access your account, and it will give you a bunch of permissions what it actually wants to access. I would thoroughly recommend on any app, when you get redirected to one of these prompts, check the permissions that it wants. If you see something and you don't understand why, it's a good idea to start asking questions. It's a lot quicker to hit deny than approve, by the way, so keep that in mind. So after the user has logged in with Discord, what will happen then is that application will receive an access token which allows them to communicate with Discord's API on your behalf. So even though it's that application making the request, it's still tied to your user account. It will show up in, say, Discord's logs as you and not them. The neat thing about OAuth in this instance, and the way a lot of services do it, is that when you're using this access token, you will get contextual information back which is relevant to that user that's tied to that access token. So if you were to make a request to say /servers or whatever the endpoint is on Discord's API and you use someone's access token, you'll get back a list of servers that they are a part of and the permissions they have on those servers, rather than just getting however many billion servers are back just for everyone. A word of warning with these, there is no one-size-fits-all solution with these particular bits of functionality. There's no one way to build it, So you are completely and utterly on your own. You're going to have to figure this one out on your own. Quick recap on Discord bots. The bot is basically a RESTful API, and it serves as a bridge between the client and Discord's API. Yep, there we go. Put that one in as a point. You are at the complete mercy of Discord at all times when you are building bots. If they change something, it's often done with little or no notice. But again, to be fair, if it's a big change that's going to screw people over, they're usually pretty good about communicating it. Rate limiting is often aggressive and non-negotiable. When Discord says you've been making too many requests, you've made too many requests. That's it. All you can do is let enough time pass until they decide to let you start making requests again. Sometimes if you check the response body of a rate limited response, it will tell you when you can start making requests again, but that's not always guaranteed. And that's deliberate, by the way, so then you can't just plumb that into a bot and then suddenly work out when you can make requests again. That's the end of bots for Discord. If anyone has any questions, we'll pause for a couple of minutes and take questions. Feel free to talk in voice if you want to ask questions. We'll be watching chat as well.
Sorry, I've just joined. I was wondering what this is about.
This is the backend topic of the month. Right now, we're looking at Discord bots. We've just gone over idempotency, and we're just going to move on to health checking and monitoring for a RESTful API.
Thank you. Cheers.
No problem.
I have a question, but just out of interest, like, how much resource does it take to run a Discord bot? Like, it seems like to me that it doesn't take like much. Or do you have any experience with that?
It depends largely on how much traffic you're expecting with your bot. So if you put your bot on a server with, say, 50,000 members and they're going to be using it all the time, of course, you're going to need more resources than if it's just for you on your own server with only you in it. So just like a regular web app, it depends largely on how much traffic it's going to be getting. But yeah, for the most part, you barely need anything to run it. The $5 a month tier on DigitalOcean, I would be very surprised if you max that out in the vast majority of reasonable circumstances.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Anyone else? Oh yeah, good point on YouTube there. I can run a bot fine on my old Raspberry Pi. Yeah, for the most part, you'd be surprised just how little you can actually get away with how efficient a lot of software is. Got a question. Have you seen the previews from the Discord team for the new API embeds? Those which can add GUIs for bots? If so, what do you think? I haven't seen those, but that sounds very nifty. Could you put a link to that in Backend chat somewhere and I'll go check it out? I think we've got another question coming in. Let me know. I'll tell you what, we'll move on, and if you want to carry on posting your question, I'll just circle back to it. So the next topic we've got, monitoring and health checking. You need this. Please do implement it if the thing that you're building is important. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It keeps an eye on your application and makes sure that it's alive, hence health checking. Bonus points if your monitoring system can notify you of any problems, minus points if it doesn't. Always have it notify you of something going wrong, because a monitoring system that can't tell you something's wrong, there's no point. This can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be, because there's no one way to monitor the health of an application. It could depend entirely on how it's set up. A low budget solution, which I've used a few times in the past, you can have just a script which is executed by a cron job, just regularly, maybe say every minute or something. And this will ping a known endpoint on the API and it will check the result. So if all of a sudden the API stops responding by the request made by the monitoring system, oh dear, something's wrong, send an email, send a push bullet notification, whatever, scramble everyone, get it fixed. A high budget solution, if you've got the time and or the budget, is you can use all manner of super shiny tools like Grafana and Prometheus. I have a repo somewhere where I've set all these up in a Docker stack, just using a little Express application that I was just fiddling with. It's probably not exactly production ready, but I'll post it anyway so you can have a look into how all this is set up. what to actually look for if you've got the time or the budget in your monitoring responses. An obvious one is to look for requests which are suddenly returning a 500 status code. The 500 status code meaning, oh no, everything has caught fire, please help. Increased response time or latency, so how long it takes for your system to accept the request, process it, and send a response back. If that suddenly starts going up, if that's on an upward trajectory, something is wrong, catch it now before it turns into absolute disaster. Oh, yep, there we go. Oh dear, something's slowing the system down. Scramble, fix. Increased load on disks is a slightly less obvious one to look for as well. The example being that massive amounts of disk activity could indicate that something is thrashing. A common one which I've seen for this is log files are going absolutely crazy. Funny enough, that was caused by a bot that decided that my service looked rather interesting and decided to start spamming every single endpoint it could find. And due to the sheer volume of traffic that was coming in, my log files started going absolutely crazy, filling up, and sooner or later my VPS ran out of disk space, and oh dear, the whole show cut into a stop. So that would be something that you could look for. One from Austin is unreturned promises. Yeah, if you've got the monitoring integrated into the application itself and not just looking at it like in the big picture mode, yeah, you could check that. I think I had another point there somewhere. Nope, there's nothing else on this slide. I thought there was. So yeah, those would be the three things that you could look for. Those are sort of your low-hanging fruit. Other things that you could look for if the tool supports it, you could start looking at things like memory usage. If your memory usage suddenly starts ticking up, that could be a big problem. The general theme is you're looking for a known good state, and then you're looking for any deviation from that known good state. So if your memory usage starts going up, disk usage starts going up, latency, response time starts going up, these are all indicators of problems. And that would be when you start scrambling people to come and try fix it. We're joking sometimes that we need to write health checkers for health checkers. Yeah, sometimes this is a problem. Funnily enough, it's in this slide. So the disadvantages of monitoring, believe it or not, there are some. The first one, nothing ever goes wrong until 3 o'clock in the morning. A pearl of wisdom my first dev boss gave me was be prepared to be woken up by everything catching fire. And yes, this happens. Sod's law. And again, sod's law. These outages at 3 AM when you're trying to get some sleep will be the ones where it has the most impact on your users. A common example would be an application built by a UK firm, hosted by a UK firm, it goes down at 3 AM. That's when all your US users are trying to use it. The next issue, it's another system in the chain to periodically maintain and periodically check. Because believe it or not, monitoring systems can go down too. They are just more systems. So if you can spare the budget and the time to keep a monitoring system healthy, then you can spare the time to keep your actual application healthy. As a general rule though, a system without monitoring or health checking, it's basically Schrodinger's box. You have no idea whether it's alive or not until you look, and that's not great. Data security is another big one that I've seen a few people get wrong when it comes to monitoring. There is a non-zero chance that data captured from your application is sensitive. Something that I've seen a lot of people screw up with in the past is stack traces. So exception pages that are generated automatically by the application, usually by the programming language. A lot of the time this will just dump out the entire contents of memory, just so you can see what's going on. Sod's law, something that will be included in there is your database credentials. Make sure that people cannot see things like stack traces. And if you've got a monitoring system capturing these things, make sure you are very careful about who can actually see the data that's been captured. I have a ping somewhere. Oh yeah, that's the previews for the Discord bot thing. Thank you very much, Swan. I'll check those out. I think I had another thing here somewhere. Nope, that's the end of my slides. I thought I had another one. So yeah, a quick recap on health checking and monitoring, which I thought I'd included, but it doesn't seem to be here. Make sure you set something up. It can be as complex or as simple as you want it to be. Sometimes simple is the way to go. Even if it's just a script which is executed every minute, couple of minutes, whatever, by a cron job, If it can check your system and give you some kind of idea whether it's alive and healthy, that's good. Another most important point, make sure it can send you notifications. You have to know immediately when something goes down, because if you find it, if you don't find it and your users do, you've suddenly lost users. So make sure that you can react to things as quickly as possible when they happen. And lastly, again with data security, very, very real chance that the data that can be captured is sensitive, things like database credentials. You do not want these in the wild for obvious reasons. Make sure you limit access to who can see these things. If you have controls for things like error reporting, make sure they are turned off for production. It's better that a user sees a blank page than suddenly sees a stack trace and, oh look, there's a set of credentials in here. Not great. So yeah, that is the end of my slides. If anyone has any questions, please do chime in.
Maybe I missed this, but could you give like some examples for what good applications for a Discord bot would be, at least for a developer?
You mean good applications like useful things to implement for a bot?
Yeah.
A pretty common one is things like user management. So banning users is usually something that gets deferred to a bot. The main reason being it's a lot easier to control access through a bot than it is through Discord itself, through Discord permissions. The main thing there being if you give somebody access to the ban command, they get access to a whole bunch of other commands by default, like managing channels and stuff. And sometimes you don't want a user to be able to access that, but you still want them to be able to say ban a user. So that would be a good thing to implement through a bot.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch of others as well. Sorry, I cut you off. There's a whole bunch of others as well, but it's a case of let your imagination run wild and see what you can come up with.
Yeah, the next thing I would ask is like how versatile can a bot be, would you say?
Oh, I've seen all manner of stuff been done with a bot. devcord uses one called StatBot, which aggregates data about messages and things and presents stats so you can see how your server's doing in terms of users and activity. There's all sorts you can do.
Yeah. All right. Those are my questions.
In a similar vein, how quickly do you run into issues with Discord terms of services, potentially limiting some more imaginative uses of bots? Has that been an issue?
I think I know what you're getting at. I can imagine there's been several people in the past who've got into a bit of trouble with Discord, like terms of services breaches. It wouldn't really be the kind of thing I'd want to discuss, but needless to say, because it's accessing Discord's API, they do tend to keep quite a close eye on what's actually being done with it. So if you do want to do anything dodgy, just be careful.
Yeah, but what are some just like the serious no-nos that is immediately? Maybe some of the less obvious ones as well that you've encountered, if you've encountered any, just so I've got an idea of what the landscape looks like.
I couldn't really say off the top of my head. The best advice I could give you there is to go and check the terms of service, the terms and conditions, and just make sure that what you're doing doesn't contravene anything in there.
Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else?
I have a question regarding the monitoring. And what kind of monitoring tools maybe are you using or could you recommend? Because I'm slowly getting into monitoring. I have set up myself a Grafana and already have a lot of data in it. And I've tried a little bit of iSinger too. And if you know maybe any other like monitoring tools which are maybe lightweight or something like that.
Like I said, the only ones that really come to mind off the top of my head are Prometheus and Grafana. Another one that I've played with, which is a bit more old school, is Zabbix. There's also Nagios as well, if you really do fancy a trip back in time.
Yeah, I did some Nagios, but it's like a bit old, so I rather do some iSinger.
Yeah, it's a proper trip back in time is Nagios. It's really good, but oh god. There's a reason people get paid to be Nagios specialists.
Yeah. Like at the company I work, we recently transitioned from Nagios to iSinger too, so yeah.
It's I've not played with iSinger, I'll have to try that one out. It's just reminded me as well, again, that I need to post that link for the Prometheus and Grafana Docker stack in the resources. I've set all that up so you can just basically do Docker Compose up, and there you go, Prometheus, Grafana. It's monitoring an application.
Just a quick question to your Docker stack. Did you use Docker Swarm features, or can it run without Docker Swarm?
I haven't built this one with Docker Swarm in mind. I think that would be on you if you wanted to set this up with a full swarm.
Ah, okay.
But I can't imagine it'd be that difficult to set up. I've just had no use for Swarm, really, so I've just never really worked with it. Got a question in Discord. Does Sentry do backend? Sentry will do basically whatever you could plumb it up to. And so the way that it generally works with these monitoring solutions, you install something into your code base which communicates with whatever service it is, whether it's Datadog, Sentry, whatever. So then your application is sending data out to these other services as needed. A couple of questions from YouTube. How do you recommend I try to get my Discord bot bigger? In terms of scaling, that would be, again, I'd have to just refer you to the documentation for whatever library that you're using, because there's so many different ways to do things. But if you mean in terms of marketing, how to get users for it, yeah, that falls outside the scope of this month's topic. But I'm sure there'll be people somewhere that can chime in. One more question from YouTube. How was your day today? It was very good, thank you. How was yours? Any more questions? No. It looks like that might have been just about everything. What will we be doing next week? I've not decided yet. If you guys have any topics you'd like me to revisit or just have a look at for you, by all means, please do post them in Backend chat. I'll have a quick look into them, just make sure I've got my facts straight. And if it's a good one, it'll be included in the next week's stream.
Thank you.
No problem. So, quick last call for questions just before we stop. Give it another couple of minutes. I will be available as well on Discord through Backend chat and stuff, so I'll be able to chat with people there. What's your opinion on AWS CloudWatch? I looked into it, but I've not actually implemented, so I couldn't tell you, unfortunately. But it's AWS, so I'm sure they're doing something right. So I've just got one last question rolling in. Yeah, it looks like that's it for questions. So thank you all very much for tuning in to Topic of the Month, Week 3 on RESTful APIs. Like I say again, if you've got any topics you'd like me to have a look into, please do post them in the Backend chat and I will get looking at those for next week's stream. Thank you all very much for joining, and I shall talk to you later. Bye-bye.